I'm Dan Drake. This is Front Up on Visitor Network TV and Channel 99. Our guest today is John Smith, the Operations Manager of the Department of Public Works of the town of Nantucket. John, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
We have a lot to talk about in terms of this past snowstorm.
Fire away.
But before we get to that, you were going through your background a little bit, and I think people would be very interested in you're just going through very quickly what you did before you came to the DPW 16 years ago.
Before I was shipwrecked here,
Well,
more or less, started out in the Yarmouth school system, went to Dennis Yarmouth. After that, went to Wentworth Institute, Northeastern University, as of late, Suffolk University, and pretty much traveled the world, did a lot of sailboat delivery down the Caribbean, worked as an engineer on a tugboat and shipyard work, mostly in wooden boat construction. Then came to the island here for Waste Options, Charlie Gifford, and spent 5 years over there. We pretty much did the terrain, moving the dump, laid out all the roads, pretty much put the system together with what's there, working with Stone and Webster, and Muhammad and Jeff would come over and throw me a cookie now and then and say, gee, come work for us, and that went back and forth about 3 or 4 years, and then they put the hook in me, and the rest is history.
Well, your responsibilities include virtually everything at the DPW other than the sewer system, or even some of that, I guess.
Well, the way it used to be is we had the sewer system and everything. Now they've diversified to a certain degree, and the sewer system has always been paid out of the sewer fund. So technically the two people were in the DPW and they ran out of our DPW garage. But as things are modified and they restructured the DPW and wastewater to a certain degree, they moved the two gentlemen that were with us back out at wastewater now, and they're more in charge of the underground as far as cleaning this, those sewer lines, inspections, so on and so forth. Emergency calls, we still do. We cooperate back and forth with that as far as like call outs at night. Restaurants in town, like when they get a backup. A lot of people in town call us all the time for, to any time at night, can be 2 o'clock in the morning when they have backups and so forth in the summertime. And we handle all of that. But now that's more or less wastewater's taken that over, more so to keep track of everything and kind of document it. So they've getting a computer system so they can kind of keep track of everything, so they can identify some of the needs areas, like they had phase 1 and 2 downtown, which was great because those pipes of early 1900s, clay pipe, and there were a lot of problems with them. Now that system is working really well. And they're looking at other areas, other needs areas, and moving along with that.
Yeah, good. This snowstorm that we had this weekend,
what is
termed by what my wife calls the Hysteria Channel as Winter Storm Juno.
Now that they go into names.
How does that rate with other storms in your recollection?
Truthfully, the one we had in of course, the no-name storm was the worst. I mean, that was really bad, mostly because of the tides and the flooding.
But you didn't have snow.
But we did not have the snow. This was a double whammy. The worst of it was that it came and it was pretty damp, and then of course we got the freezing temperatures afterwards. And when it becomes ice, all bets are off. As far as like getting equipment to move it and so on. That compounded with equipment breakdowns. We lost half a dozen trucks on and off. There were 2 trucks before the storm that were pretty much deadline just because they didn't want to put any more money into them. They're too old. And what they are is just there's little enough money in the budget as it is, and they just become a siphon. And it just takes so they park them. And they're due to be replaced, but through the new procurement laws and so on, it really kind of
takes a while.
Somewhat of a snafu. It takes a while for that to happen. So we had a limited amount if everything went well, and it didn't go well. We had a few of them that broke.
Let's go back a step. What do you do to prepare for a storm like that when you hear it's coming?
It starts actually way back in September, where we go through all our snow equipment and just make sure what do we need, what are the parts up front. Everyone has their individual trucks that they normally drive. Our snowplow drivers are familiar usually with the area that they go to. So they check out the truck, put a new blade if necessary, make sure everything's up to snuff. Pickle the plows and the sanders, they run them through, run material through them, make sure they're all ready to go. and then everything is pretty much put aside, and we go about our daily business of, you know, like doing drainage and so on and so forth. We've done a lot of upgrading around the town.
Was this a storm that you think was, I know you obviously have already said it's taxed the capabilities of the DPW, but has it?
To a certain degree, it's like they're all different.
Yeah.
But this one, that was like you had the hurricane and the snowstorm at the same time, which is really kind of weird.
And you have several spots on the island where you have real trouble when the wind blows and the snow comes.
It's,
to begin with.
Exactly. The Serengeti is perfect for that, as well as Sankaty. You know, the one thing about Nantucket's a world-class destination. Everybody knows that. I mean, you know, Moby Dick and all. And for the most part, you look at Sankaty and you see the beautiful lighthouse and the greens of the golf course, and that's wonderful 11 months out of the year. And then, well, I should say 10 months. And then January and February, we always end up, you know, we get a few storms. Some years we dodge the bullet. We've had years where there's very little, if any, snow at all, and it's 50 degrees in February, and that's wonderful. But this year is not that. So as a result, all of that open plain area just blows right onto Pulpus Road and, you know, Milestone. And the Serengeti is no longer, you know, fun for us. We put up snow fence, but it really doesn't work. The best thing to do would just be let it blow across and then just keep forcing it out of the bike path side. But in none of these circumstances, when you get such a high deposition, I'm not sure how many inches an hour were coming down, but it was pretty serious. That with the wind blowing, I believe it was 5 or 6 hours at 65 miles an hour. The trees just couldn't take it. I mean, they were dropping right and left. We lost all kinds. Dale was going crazy all night, and the boys into the next day, and truthfully, right up until today, we're still trying to clear the town out.
Well, you've been working with front loaders and so forth. And
we have, the thing is, usually we clear beforehand, getting back to your original question, that we usually get ahead of time. We make contracts with Toscana and the Barrett brothers and some of the other guys in town, just so that we have them up front and we can use them, because you know we're going to need at least 5 loaders. You need one that's on Pulpus from Slozak's farm, which is another neat area that you just have wide open where good corn comes from. And that drifts up pretty bad. And then down out by Psyche Evans' old house by Pulpus Cemetery, there's another area. So that loader kind of goes back and forth and just widens it out. We did get a new 10-wheeler, which really helped out a lot. But just the same, if they run tandem, they can kind of keep it up, and that's all they do. They just kind of like make that loop in the heat of a storm, and those areas are pretty much whiteouts. It's bad.
How many? That takes a lot of fuel to do that.
For the most part, and that
how many of those loops can they do before they have to come back?
Well, they can pretty much, once they're fueled up, they'll run all night.
They will.
Yeah, they'll run all night. And into the next day. Usually, if they fuel up in the afternoon and they're going constant pushing, they can get through till almost 11 o'clock the next day. Our problem is our generator had some water in it and died, and one of the guys that went to start it turned it, and of course they killed the battery and flooded it, and they couldn't get it started again.
So you couldn't pump fuel.
So with the time, all the power was out, the communication was out. I mean, it was a lot of things that compounded pretty much everything. Fortunately, for us, we do have a built-in redundancy that isn't planned for. It's just that we never got on the 800 megahertz radios from the police department that originally was planned. We got about half of them. So we still had the old Motorola, which is still worked pretty good. So it's a little tough when you're in the truck. You've got 2 radios and a handheld, and you're still trying to plow and do all of that.
Do you train the guys in dry and snow plowing at all?
We do to a certain degree, but it's usually something which is a hands-on type of thing. We'll give someone an easy route, and you know, whether they succeed or fail, it doesn't matter. They still got to do it. So it's pretty much. I don't really have any complaints at all about the crew. They're a good bunch of guys. When things are at their worst, they're at their best.
Obviously, there was a lot of ice buildup from the freezing that you talked about earlier. Could some of that slush and so forth have been gotten out of there ahead of time? If
more people and more equipment, yes, absolutely. 2 of our 3. See the 6-wheelers that I was talking about earlier. We have 2 of them that were just meatballs, so they weren't even in use. Then the ones we did have was that broke down, and we lost one of the 10-wheelers for a short period of time. So for a while downtown, we only had 3 trucks. During those circumstances, if you get behind, it's over. By the time you get back there, and especially with the temperature drop, once that happens and that starts to solidify, you need a certain amount of breakout force to bust that loose. And what happens with most of the trip edges, if it can't do it, it'll just roll up over it, and then you start to lose. And unfortunately, a lot of the problem too is a lot of joyriding. They just cleared, to my knowledge, a state of emergency, and that means everybody off the road. But you can't believe the amount of people that just come out and get involved. And truthfully, they're putting themselves in harm's way as well as us. And that's one thing I wish that, you know, someone somehow, just how would I put it, common sense would prevail, and people would stay the hell home.
It doesn't though, does it?
No, it doesn't.
That's human nature.
And so they had 3 trucks downtown, and it was just, you know, they were going like crazy, just trying to keep up.
It looked like there was a lot of drifting downtown too.
Yeah, exactly. So what we had to do is, for the most part, when that happens, when we start to lose on all the ancillary roads, we go back to square one. Square one is main roads open, hospital, food, pharmacy, fuel. And that is in the core of the area that, you know, like all Fair Street, Pine Street, you know, some of the side roads, like unfortunately Dukes Road. Matticat suffered heavily. The citizens of Matticat are outraged. I don't blame them. It's, you know, I've been through there. I've been the last couple of days trying to break up what's there, and they did have a tough time of it. But once they got onto the main road and Matticat Road, they could get to town very easily.
Right. What would you do differently, now, knowing what you know now about this?
If we have the same circumstances and the same equipment and the same men, unfortunately, you would have roughly the same result. The only thing that we could do, obviously, is, you know, get newer equipment, have a better place to store it, and, you know, it's all perfect world stuff. Everything is in the works, but it'll be probably 4 or 5 years before it comes to fruition.
Are all those trucks stored outside?
Everything, for the most part, they are. Our equipment, like the grader and so on and so forth. If you go to a classic comparison would be just go to the yard, you look at the equipment. If anytime you want to do it, it's fine. Then go to the airport and take a look at the equipment they have. Everything has been stored inside. It looks virtually showroom condition. It's, you know, that's the difference.
It doesn't get used for other things either, for the most part. Some of it does.
Yeah, a lot of it sits. I mean, you know, granted, they're not grading roads, they're not doing a lot of things that we do, but just the same, it's still that salt caustic air which is everywhere. We're breathing it right now. I mean, it just, it is what it is. It's unfortunate. And there is a garage that I believe they're talking about, it's in the works, which more or less a facility that would bring, like, the sign department, everything there as far as a break room, even a place that, you know, during a bad hurricane, we don't have shifts. We only have one crew. Police and fire have round-the-clock shifts.
And the airport
we have to
does
go.
To a degree.
Some of our guys went 50 hours straight. That's no joke. And we have a policy standing that if they start to fall asleep at the wheel, there's no problem. Pull over and take that little cat nap for 5 minutes. No one's going to say anything. Because if they take out that truck, then we're behind the 8 ball.
Right.
You know, let alone, God forbid, somebody gets hurt. I mean, as far as what happened, I mean, you know, as far as like...
what about the power company? Do you work with them, or are they responsible?
We always do.
Yeah.
Last time, not this past storm, but the storm prior, they had a failure. They were replacing a couple of lines up on North Water Street, had blown down and covered the main transmission lines and blown up the whole power for the area. And the tree limbs were sitting right on the power lines. Of course, the wind's raging, it's a hurricane, and all their lights blew out. So Ronnie Conway was up there and he couldn't see for a damn. So he asked, is there any way we could illuminate them? I had 2 spotlights in my truck, so I helped them out with that. Their chainsaw broke, the hydraulic one that's in the truck. So I took the one out of my truck. He brought that up in the bucket and used that. So we work together all the time.
Yeah. What about, for example, though, where they have to do pretty significant line replacement, like on the Eel Point Road, for example? Do you clear that all for them, or do they?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. So overall, how would you rate the on a scale of 1 to 10? Well, how would you rate?
I know most people would probably give us about a 2 right about now, just simply because, you know, in the information age.
How would you but how would you rate it?
truthfully, my guys, I'd give them, given
all the circumstances.
All the circumstances, everything considered, I'd give them an 80%.
That's good.
I mean, there's always room for improvement in anybody and anything. But as far as my guys go, I know how tired they got. I know how much we asked of them. And to a man, they all came forward. So I have no complaints.
That's great. John Smith, thank you very much.
Pleasure has been mine.
I will shake hands.